The great state of Tennessee, from the eastern Smoky Mountains of Appalachia to the western end of the state, the mighty Mississippi. So many different styles of terrain across this state, and there's so much history passed through this state to give it the volunteer name. Here's the state flag. It represents 3 parts of the state, and here they go. This is what they represent: east, middle, and west. That's what the flag represents. And here it is in the United States. It became the 16th state of the Union in 1796. Now, the history of Tennessee and the volunteer name got started way back in the first days when they was trying to settle this country before it became a state. They come into this country from the east, trying to settle over these mountains, raise a family, start a new beginning in simple homesteads and farms. But as time went on, the Revolutionary War began. They was trying to break their independence from England, break away from the British. And as time went on, war always finds a way to find itself into the people that's just trying to live peaceful. Well, here, Patrick Ferguson, at the time of the war, was on the southern end under General Cornwallis's group. He commanded a troop of nothing but Tories and cavalrymen and stuff, and he was in South Carolina, and he was trying to patrol the wilderness areas. And he didn't like all these pioneers siding with the Americans, so he sent these people in the wilderness and the pioneer country an ultimatum. The ultimatum was, you either surrender your arms and serve the British Empire, or I will burn and destroy and lay waste to all of your settlements and all your properties. So as all the word got passed down through the settlements and all around the frontier of what this ultimatum was, they got the matter they got. And here, the leader of the militia out of Virginia, as William Campbell, he commanded 900 troops under his command, still fighting the British in the east in the southern campaign. And here's John Sevier. He commanded and rounded up about 900 men out of Tennessee frontier country. And these were a special breed of men. These were Indian fighters out of East Tennessee, just settling that wild country. So they gathered up all these men, a total of about 1,800, and they thought they'd pay this Ferguson man a visit. And these were called Over the Mountain Men, John Sevier's people. And they finally caught up with him at a place called Kings Mountain, October 1780, surrounding them up on this mountain, and after a few hours fighting, they finally took control of this mountain. Now, this old Patrick Ferguson, he boasted and bragged that nobody could ever remove him from this mountain the way he had set up his defenses. But guess what? They buried him there on that mountain. He never did get removed from that mountain after all. So this started the first part of the Tennessee Volunteers in the very early history of before it became a state. Now, this next chapter in the history of Tennessee, from the name of the Volunteers, came from the War of 1812. I guess the British had to have another go at America since they lost the Revolutionary War, and this was the War of 1812. And America wasn't faring too good. So in the Western Theater, Andrew Jackson became the leader of the militia in the Western campaign. And he only could round up the volunteers of Tennessee 1,500 men, plus people out of Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, the whole southern end of it, to fight the British. And he met them at a place called New Orleans, the Battle of New Orleans. He was outnumbered greatly. And the battle took place January 8th, 1815. And the sad part is, it took place a week or two after the war is already ended. They didn't know. But anyway, his forces were outnumbered. It was 1,500 against 8,000. But he prevailed. He won this battle, and he became a big hero at the time. So that really cemented the name Tennessee Volunteers. That really got their start. That was the name that was stuck with them there on. Now, in my opinion, what cemented the name Volunteer in the state of Tennessee came from humble beginnings. Davy Crockett, a mountain boy born in the hills of East Tennessee. Just an everyday guy from the country, and he became larger than life. Everybody began to know David, and before he knowed it, he was an American legend. The stories he told, the places he's seen, the things he's done, and before you know it, he started into politics. And in 1826, he started out with a state legislator, and then as time went on, he became a congressman in Washington, D.C., and served 2 or 3 terms. And he'd fought in the Creek Indian Wars, and he stood up for the common man, and he stood up for the Indians. He thought we was doing them wrong, and he tried to protect their rights too. But as the 7th president, Andrew Jackson, he fought with him. He didn't agree with all his terms, and them two didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. So he lost his election finally because of Andrew Jackson. And he got tired of all this, and he went out west to start in Texas with Sam Houston and the rest of these Tennesseans. And he ended up at the Alamo. Now, I'm sure if he knowed what was going to happen, he wouldn't want to be there. But as fate would have it, he ended up at the Alamo. And this little old fort, they tried to defend it in 1836, and you could see it nothing but mud and straw and a few rocks and bricks. And they withstood a 13-day siege here in this little old adobe place. And for 13 days, a 200-man army trying to hold off a 6,000-man army of Santana Anna's Mexican forces. Just overwhelming odds. But they give it all they had, but especially they give their lives. Now, there's been a lot of debates on how Davy died. Did he die in battle, or was he captured and then executed? But it really doesn't matter how he died. He died an American hero fighting for freedom and what he believed. He'll always be remembered. He was a true American hero, an old boy from East Tennessee. He will always be remembered. Now, in 1846, they was fighting over land in California, Arizona, Texas, with Mexico, and one thing led to another, and another war, the Mexican-American War of 1846. And the Secretary of State asked the state of Tennessee for 2,800 volunteers. And they started this campaign with Mexico. So he asked for 2,500 or 2,800 volunteers, and Tennessee got 30,000 Tennessee volunteers up to join the Army. They remembered what happened to Davy Crockett, and they thought it was payback time. They wanted to get a little bit even with them. So there you go. This lasted a year or two, couple of years. They even took Mexico City, took it all, and they give most of it back to them. They kept the state of California and Arizona, some Mexico, and the borderline changed around Texas. But there you go. There's more Tennessee volunteers. This settled the volunteer name forever. in the state of Tennessee. And as time went on, there was other wars. The Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and so on. But they had done establish the name volunteer in the state of Tennessee. And yes, they named their school after it, the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee, the Tennessee Vols. Now this old state, it's seen a lot of history go through it as time went on, and I hope it still continues. It's a great state with a lot of history and tradition. So, I hope you enjoyed this day, a little bit of history of why the state of Tennessee is called the Volunteer State and how it got its name. There's a lot of proud people fought and died for this state and for our country, and they shall never be forgotten. So, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.